Before I start my video, in the testing times COVID, I would like to emphasize that we should follow social distancing, wear a mask, and most importantly, take care of our health. So I request everyone to please follow this to save humanity. Coming back, so today I'm going to be showing you a game between Don Fabi or Fabiano Caruana versus MVL, which happened in round number 8 of the FIDE candidates, which is resuming almost after 1 year. I would say that this was possibly the most exciting game of the round and perhaps the entire event until now. Quite possibly you won't find a game like that with so much entertainment. So let's start. It started off with e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4 cd4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, bishop to g5, and e6, f4, and queen d6. This is the Sicilian poison pawn variation. And ironically, Caruana and MVN played the same opening in Tata Steel Chess 2021, which happened 2-3 months back, and in which MVL lost badly because he made an opening error, and this was his chance to redeem himself. And he played quite well. Queen b2, queen takes b2, rook to b1, queen to a3, and here normally f5 would be the move which would go into this very boring drawish line which goes after knight c6, f takes c6, f takes c6, knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop takes e2, e7, castle, castle, rook b3, queen c5, bishop e3, queen e5, bishop d4, queen a5, bishop to b6. And Caruana rightfully avoids this, as this is going to be just repetition. And that's why he tries to play e5 to gain something. And after e5, MVL responded with h6, bishop to h4, d takes e5, f takes e5, knight fd7, and knight to e4. As you can see, white has sacrificed one pawn and black is going to take another pawn just so that white can get activity. And in chess, activity is the most important. Here, knight takes e5 would be a big blunder because of knight to b5. And of course, he takes b5, well, queen d8 is actually checkmate. And if the queen moves anywhere, something like to a5, okay, well, queen takes a5 is there. And there is no way to stop this d8 queening, or this knight c7, or this attacking the queen. All at once, not possible to stop. So, therefore, MVL rightfully played queen takes a2, whereafter rook d1. And believe it or not, this has been seen in 2,300 games already. White being 2 pawns down. Well, queen d5 was played as knight takes e5, can also be met by now knight f5 again. Same idea, queen d8, and this time anything like queen d5 is not possible. So, therefore, black played queen d5 straight away, and queen to e3, sacrificing yet another pawn. He is now 3 pawns and he's still counting. Something like queen f4 would clearly be a blunder because of g5. That's a4. So queen d5, queen to e3, and black takes on e5. Of course, if knight takes e5, now knight to b3, stopping any queen a5 checks, and wherever the queen moves, rook d8 is going to come next. And black has to sacrifice his queen, which I don't think he would want to. So queen takes c5 and c3. The first interesting move of Fabiano, as before all of the moves were played before. But this has only been seen in 12 games where all of them were correspondence chess. And now MVL thought for quite a lot of time and played bishop to c5, which is Engine's number one option. Bishop e7 is another option which could be looked into, but bishop c5 is clearly the best. Bishop g3, queen e5. And now, pause the video, it's white to play, and how should you respond? White to play. Here, if you said bishop d6, you are playing like almost all other correspondence games which have been played. Where after bishop takes d5, knight b5, queen takes d1, king takes d1, bishop to e5, knight check, take, and okay, maybe even king e7, and after knight to c4, rook to d8, and this is going to be very unclear where both sides have equal chances because black has 3 pawns and a rook and a knight for the queen. But on the other hand, white has the queen, which is of course going to be an advantage in itself. But bishop d6 was not played in the game. Here, Don Fabi played bishop to c4. Double exclamation marks. Why am I saying so? Because of the effort in his preparation. It's simply brilliant. This is the 18th move, and yet Caruana had figured all of this out and played bishop to c4. And of course, this is not one of the top choices of the engine, but Fabi revealed that in the post-game conference, this was the work done by his second Rustem Kasimdanov. And now, after queen takes c4, he is going to be 6 points down. But the idea of bishop c4 was diverting the queen from d5, and now white can play bishop to d6. And the idea now is simply to take on c5. And next, if you take, then of course knight takes d6 is there. And now black can't castle because of this bishop on d6, which will be very annoying for black. But here, I will flip the board for you. It is black to play, and can you find the brilliant defensive resource for black, which gives him stability, which MVL found. Black to play. Pause the video if you need to. Here, knight to f6. This was the only move which gains equality and in a slight advantage for black. And according to Caruana, this was the move which he was quite unhappy with, that Maxime found. But yes, nevertheless, knight f6 is certainly the best move, just developing your knight to a better square. Why not any other move? Let's see. f5 will be too much, as after knight takes c5, knight takes c5, and knight takes f5. Queen to e4 can be simply met by knight takes g7, king to f7, and castle check. And this will be clearly winning for white, as white has the overwhelming attack. Okay, let's see other moves. Something like bishop to a7, bringing the bishop back, can be met by bishop to b4. What's the point? That after queen to a2 or something, simply rook to f1. And now, just look at all of white's pieces. All those knights attacking. This queen in a lovely square right against the black king. And almost everything is covered for the black, is uncovered for the black king, and this should be easily winning for white. So knight f6, trying to hold this position. But after knight takes c5, knight to d5, attacking the queen to e5, and again your move. Find the resource which black has to save the game. Pause the video if you need to. Now, here, only move is rook to g8. It is important to play this move right now and not after taking on c3. And okay, let's see why queen takes c3 doesn't work. This is very tempting, but doesn't work, like I said, because of king f2. Queen b2 check, never mind, king f3. Queen c3, and now rook d3. And white has the upper hand. Because next move, rook e1's coming. And attack on e6. Most likely white can sacrifice it soon. Something like now rook g8 can still be met by rook at e1, and white will have the clear attack. So that's why rook to g8 first, so that the rook cannot come to e1 quickly. And here white played knight d takes e6, f takes e6, and knight takes e6. And again, it seems that white has an overwhelming attack because this backing is so weak. But it's your move. White is threatening so many devastating threats. So how should you stop it? White to play. Pause the video. Black to play. Pause the video if you need to. Here, the best move was knight f6, which MVL couldn't find. But I don't know how difficult or easy it is for these top players to find a move like knight f6. This is almost, I think, impossible to find because the knight on e6 is going to move with some discovered check. But after knight f6, there is nothing. Something like, okay, knight d8 check. Well, don't take it, of course. Simply bishop e6. Knight takes e6 and king f7. And it is black who is winning right now because once the knight moves, rook e8 and the queen's gone. If the knight doesn't move, well, anyways, you'll just win the knight. Any other possibilities like, okay, knight c7 check, simply king f7. Knight takes a8 is not possible because of rook e8 again. So black's idea is simple. Play king to f7 and then threaten rook e8. Brilliant. So, also, if you said king f7, you can also give yourself the points because this also leads to a draw, but you have to see quite a lot of extremely complex lines. Something like, okay, rook f1 check, knight to f6, queen h5 check, king takes e6, queen f5 check, king f7, and this would probably just be a draw. But white can of course try other things like king f2 and then rook h1, rook d1 check, rook d1 check. And this is gonna be very unclear. So that's why knight f6 is clearly the best. But MVL decided to trade the queens with queen takes c3. And after queen takes e3, knight takes c3, knight to c7 check. And this is the critical fork where white is able to win the rook. Now, where should the black king go? Should he go to d7 or should he go to f7? Let's see both lines. If king d7, then now rook to d3, attacking the knight. Knight goes to e4, bishop check, king c6, and knight takes a8. And in the game, it was king f7, rook d3, knight e4, and this. So what is the actual difference between these two? I mean, in both lines, then he's gonna win the rook. But the king is better placed on c6 instead of g6, as the king is going to go to f7 to g6. But in this line, it's going to d7 and c6. But the black king should be on g6. Why should it be so? Because it's gonna help in defending these two weak pawns, which can be easily attacked by the rooks and the bishops. On the other hand, these two are not that weak because these two just have to roll down the board quickly because these are passed pawns. So both ways, king has their benefits. King on c6 looks much more active. On the other hand, king on g6 looks much more in a better defending position. So it's your choice how you should play. But everyone opted for king f7. And knight d3, knight e4 was played. But Can we find the move which MVL missed? Black to play. Pause the video if you need to. This is really hard. Here, MVL played 94, but the good move was rook to a7, which looks like the most passive move, yet it is the best move. And this is what Caruana told Maxime that he should have played after the game. However, MVL was not really thinking about these passive moves as he had to get some counterplay quickly. But this does hold easily, like after castle, king to g6, rook takes e3, and now the only move is king to h7. This is a brilliant waiting move along with position improving move because now this king is easily tucked on h7 where it is defending these two pawns safely, and also this king cannot be checked or checkmated anyhow right now. And black side is simple: play b5, something like knight d7, bishop b7, and then just push these pawns forward. Let's see. If moves like knight c6 straight away, well now bishop to c5, b6, bishop takes b6, and now this knight on c6 is hanging along with the bishop rook on a7. If b5, well then knight d5, bishop to e6, knight to e7 check, rook takes e7, bishop takes e7, and this is better for white because this black knight on b8 is not doing anything. This rook on g8 is not really doing anything. On the other hand, these two pieces are controlling open files. Clearly better for white. But alas, rook a7 was not played and knight e4 was played, which looks like the most human move. But after castle check, king g6, knight takes a8, knight to c6, knight to b6, rook to d8, knight takes c8, rook takes c8. And this position is critical because this position looks much closer to equality than an advantage for white because black's pieces are much better placed right now and this knight on e7 is a monster. However, engines seem to disagree. They think that black's queenside pawns are gonna fall, and at the same time, the rooks and the bishops can launch a deadly attack against black's king, especially and attack this g7 square, which is going to be very weak. But as a human, I think that this looks like a draw, as it is two knights and two knight, two pawns versus bishop and rook. So equal material. Black has two passed pawns, which is a advantage for him. White has two rooks, which is an advantage for him. And overall, it equals out. But engines disagree. And bishop a3 was played here, but engines recommend rook to e1. Quickly just getting this knight away from the square. Something like knight takes d6, then rook takes d6 check, king h7, and then rook d7. This is clearly winning for white because this pawn's going to fall next something b5, without rook a1 or something, attacking a6. And also maybe even rook c1. And this knight cannot move it freely. So here knight f6 is the only good move. But after rook b1, b5, rook c1, and with precise play, whites will be able to put black into a lot of pressure. And sooner or later, these queenside pawns will fall. Like knight to e7, rook takes c8, knight takes c8, bishop to c5. And now this a6 pawn is very weak and there is almost no way to defend it. But bishop a3 was played. Caruana not wanting to trade the bishop for the knights. And now rook to c7, rook to f4, knight f6, bishop b2, knight e7, bishop takes g takes, and h4. And I think this is not that accurate because now this g4 square is gonna be very weak. And after h5, which happened in the game, black has this outpost on f5, which cannot be attacked by this g pawn. Right? So check, king f7, rook to g5, nice move, taking each of the pin. Rook check, king h2, knight g6, attacking the rook on f4, rook to f2, and here black took on h4. Though I think the best move would have been king to g7, because after rook takes h5, knight to e5, and this white rook is kind of oddly placed. Something like rook to b2, attacking the b5, now b5, rook to b3, rook to c4, and this should be equal. It's actually very difficult to play from both sides, but this position is equal right now as this h4 pawn is very weak. This rook on h5 cannot really move anywhere. But knight takes h4 was tried, rook takes h5, knight g6, rook check, and rook takes b7. So black has already lost one of his queenside pawns. Knight e5, rook b6, and rook c6. And this is a very interesting decision from MVL, I think, to trade the rooks, which does seem to draw the game. Something like king e7, then king g3, and the game would go on and go on, but black should be able to defend. But rook c6 was played, rook takes, knight takes, king g3, king to f7, rook c2, knight b4, rook d2, and okay, some moves were played. In the end, white won the pawn on a6. And this is a theoretical draw, but it's important to understand where we should place our knights. Where should the knight stay to defend? Somewhere like e7, g7, or should it be on f7 to stop these two squares and this f6 square? Where should it be? I will ask you this question. Pause the video and think. Where should the knight be to defend properly? Here, the knight should stay always on g7, and I will explain why. So, okay, knight f7, king e4, knight h6, rook a5, knight f7, knight e6, knight f5, and here black played knight to h6, which was a very bad blunder. Here, knight g7 is the only move. I will explain why. The knight is best placed here for several reasons. First of all, it keeps the white king out. Then it cannot come to h5, g5, f5, e5, e6, or e8. And even if the white king tries to come through this d6 and try to come to e7, black will simply play king to f7, and this king cannot come in anyhow. But why not knight on e7? Well, imagine if the knight is on e7 right now. But the thing is that king is on f7, and now the only square, let's say white gives a check from x7, would be to come back to f8. Because the king cannot come to g6 because this knight will be hanging. Come to f8, and now black is deemed to the 8th rank only. But knight on g7 gives the possibility that whenever black gives a check somewhere, black king just comes to g6 safely. So from this, a good rule can be memorized, which can be that it is important to place your knight on the file same as the white pawn on g6. Okay, something like rook d7, knight h5, king e4, knight g7, rook a7, knight e8, and how can he even attack? And another benefit, this white king cannot come to h5 because of this knight on g7. It's simply brilliant why the knight is on g7 and not on e7. But MVL didn't see this plan, and he played knight h6. Rook g3 check, a good move. King to f7, king e4. Knight g8, king f5. Knight e7 check, king f4, knight check, and king g4, the slight inaccuracy. Here king f5, knight e7 check, and now king e4 is important. So that this black knight cannot come here, And slowly White will just want to play something where like Rook A3 and Rook A7. An easy win. But after King G4, King G6, the good move. King has to go all the way back to F3, King F4, King E4. And now again MVL had to realize that knight belonged on G7 with after knight C7, King to F5, knight E6, King G4 and knight G7. The knight is there safe. But he played knight to E7, which was a gross blunder, and after King F4, King F5, slowly, White just tried to break through, and finally, White King was able to come to H5. Something like King G6, and now King H4 check. And the Black King is forced to come to H7. If the Black Knight was on G7, on the other hand, then the Black King had this possibility of going to H6. Another benefit of why the Knight is on G7 and not on G8. King F7, King H5, plus knights. So King H5 was played, Knight D5, and once the White King had reached H5, it would be an easy win, King G6, and MVL resigned the game because he's going to lose this F6 pawn. I would say a great game with lots of tactical possibilities for both sides, and the opening was played almost perfectly. Amazing opening preparation from Fabiano, and then Caruana just was wanting to play for the win in the end game, and he achieved it. MVL, on the other hand, found lots of great defensive possibilities to get the upper hand, but he missed 2-3 moves and made 2-3 inaccuracies, which lets Fabiano get the advantage, and he converted it. Overall, brilliant game. So, yep, thank you for watching. Bye.